Two.
Two?
Or one.
Or one? Two or one, or one or two?
Just do one.
I'll do both, so that way you guys can see the combined, since we're so decisive today. Alright, so first things first, we're going to start on 2024 T3-1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Insert, and we're going to add a chart. So we're going to go to Scatter. We're going to do a scatter plot with no lines, only markers. So we'll click that, we'll add that. Now what we're going to do, if you want to do it right now, is you can go ahead and right-click it. You're going to go down to Move Chart. We're going to put it on a new sheet, and we're going to call this sheet 2024 T3. And then we'll put all, just so we know that it has both in it. So now that we have both, we're going to move it to this nice new sheet. Now we're going to right-click it again, and we're going to go to Select Data. We're going to add a series. This series name is going to be 2024 T3-1. Alright? So now we're going to select our X values for our 2023-24. And we're going to select them from the first one. So now we just have to look at our strain values, right? These are our X values. So now we're going to just select here. And we'll just scroll all the way to the bottom. And we're going to want to only go to where we took off the X densometer, right? So we're going to go to get down to 13%. Okay, so there's our 13%. So we want the first data point. So 78.97 is going to look like our first point right there, or our last point. 78.97. Now we'll go to our values, Y values. So we're going to select these, and I don't have to do it again because I can just edit this. So we said 78.97, right? That was our last point. That was that first 13% point. So we're going to click that button to get off. And now we have our X and our Y values. Our Y values were the stress and our X values were the strain. Now we'll hit OK. What happened? Oh, it didn't take all the values. Okay, so we'll go back up to here, and then we'll change this again, 78.97. So all I did was I had to redo it again because it just took that last data point. Something, something, something. Get assistance entering a function I don't hear. Series X values. Strain. There we go. Okay. So just a little mishap there, but we got it fixed. I just had to delete everything and it worked. So what happened was it just selected that one data point, so I just had to delete what it had and then redo it. Okay? So now we have all our data there. So now that we have all our data, what we can do now is we can right-click this, and we can go to Format Data Series. After we right-click it, that brings up this little box again. And we can go to Marker Options. And for the marker options, we don't want to see the markers, so we're just going to hit None. We'll go to Line, and we're just going to want a solid line. It's not going to take a while, so just hit Yes. You can choose any color you want. We'll just choose orange, just to show a different color. Line style, you want to keep it the same. You can decrease the size if you don't want it so large. If you want it 1.5, or you can make it larger if you want, just to show you the different options. So now that we have that, now we can just hit Close, and we have our data. So now that we have this, what we need to look at is we need to find the ultimate, the UTS, and we also need to find our breaking point. So in order to find our ultimate, we just need to go back to our data series, which was the first one. And there's a function called max. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals max, and then I'm going to select my data for the stress from here, and then I'm going to see what my last value is. So we can see our data increasing, and now it's starting to decrease. So what I notice is it's starting to decrease around some point above that. So I'm going to go to 7912. And what it's going to do is it's going to find that maximum value in that range. So there. Now I know my maximum is 84,262,71. Okay? So that's my maximum stress. So now what I can do is I can do that Control F function that's very helpful, and I can type in 84,262.71. And that'll find me that data point. So 7294 happened at around 12%, okay, or 0.118 strain. So now that we have that, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to assign a color to this. This next step is just a optional step, just that way you guys can notice where you took your data from. And we'll call this the UTS. And using that Control F function that I used before, say I was in a different point in my data range, I can hit Control F, and I can type in UTS, and I can say Find Next, and it'll find where I labeled that data. So that way I can always refer back to it. Okay? So now that we have our UTS, what we can do is we can go back to our graph, which I call 2024 T3 All. And now we can go to Select Data. We'll add another series. It's called another series even though it's just a single point, so we'll call this the UTS. So we'll call it, actually since this is going to be all of them, we'll call this the first UTS, or one UTS, and then we'll go to our X values, and we'll find our X value, which is our strain, and our Y value, which is our stress. We hit OK, and now we have a point. Now what you may notice is that point is not labeled. So now what you need to do is you need to go back up to Format, and with the drop-down menu over to the left, you need to go down to your series, which shows the point now, and you're going to go to Format Selection because it's too small to right-click, so we have to do that through this intermediate step. Now we're going to go to Marker Options. We can do built-in, we can do an automatic, whatever you want. So we're just going to go built-in, and we're going to choose either a square, diamond, whatever you want, whatever suits you. So we'll just keep it with the square. And then you can change the size. Now you don't want to make it too large, so we'll just keep it a nice size just so you guys can at least see it, but you can make it smaller for when you actually put it in your lab. So marker fill, you don't have to worry about that. You can do a solid color so that way you can change it. So if you want to keep it, black and gray or whatever scale you want to use for your colors, you can always change that. Line color. Now, what you notice is in your legend you have a point and then you have this line. So that's just an automatic because it is a series, but with this series we only have one data point. So what you're going to want to do is you're just going to hit no line, and that no line says there's no line before and after, which also gets rid of it on there, which tells it that it's just a series of points, and that series of points is a single point. Okay? So now we have our point. So now that's the ultimate. So now since it's nice and large, what we can always do is we can go and we can format data series, and we can add labels if you want, and that's all here if you need to. We should be able to be a place to add a label. Add data label, there we go. So now we got our data label. So what you may notice is it only gives you the Y value, right? It only gives you stress. So with these data labels, if you just click it once and then click it a second time or third time, you should be able to get in there and edit the values. So we know our strain was the 0.1184, I believe it was. We can go back real quick and just check our data. It was 11845. So now I'll just click back in here again, and I'll change that. So now I have my two values, right? I can make it look nice. I can make it look like an actual data point if you want. You can label it the UTS, right? So now I have my data label. Now I have my UTS, and I have the strain, and I have the stress, correct? Now I have my UTS. Next thing we had to do was the breaking point, right? Now we're going to go back to our data, and we're going to scroll down to some of the last data points. And what we're going to be looking at is this column. I'm going to scroll up to the top. We're going to be looking for the load right here. We want to see where it drops, because where it drops significantly is the point at which it actually breaks. So what you'll notice is these last 4 data points down here. So we have, 16, 16,000, 16,000, and then all of a sudden it drops down to around 10. So we're going to use this point right here, the one right above that. We'll give this another color. You can keep it all the same color, it doesn't matter. And then we'll just call, probably should extend it out at least. Now we'll call this the break. So now I have my labels, right? So that way I can always go back, hit Control F, and I can find my points. So now I have my break point. So what I can do is I can go back to my graph. Again, right click, select data, add a series, even though it's just a point. We'll call this the break. You guys can label it with fancier names if you want. We'll go back to the first one. Now we're on selecting our X values. So the X value, remember, we're going to have to calculate, so we'll do that later. For now, we'll just give it this value. And then we'll also assign it our stress value for its Y. Now it's going to plot a point here, and you're not going to see it again. So what we're going to have to do, remember, is we're just going to have to go up to the Format tab, drop-down menu, Series Break, Format Selection, Marker Options, and then give it a color. So we're going to give it built-in, we'll give it a green color. Alright, so now we got that. So we'll go back to our data, and now we'll actually calculate what our strain was. So the original length for 2024, we have all these values. Okay, we'll get rid of that. We don't need those right now. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do elongation. Now, how do we measure elongation? Delta L over L, right? Okay. So now we have parentheses. Now we're going to do delta L. So in order to do that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to take our final minus our initial in parentheses. And now we're just going to divide that by our original. And we're going to hit enter. So now we have our strain. Okay, so now we can copy that, Control C, and we can go back to our data, and we can add this there. Paste value, we just want the number. So Excel brings up a little box. Sometimes it pastes something that you don't need. So what we want is we want to paste the value. So if you click this little drop-down menu that always pops up when you paste something, you can just go to the paste values and you just want the value that you got. You don't want it to keep the function. Okay? So now that we got that, we'll go back to our graph. And since we have our point, we can always just right-click that, or you can always go under the Format tab and do the drop-down menu. Either way. And we're going to right-click that. We're going to select our data. We're going to go to our breakpoint. And we're going to edit that. Our X value is now going to be this value. And click that. And that should give us our point. Click OK. Okay, so that looks to have gone a little too high. So that may have not been the breakpoint that we were looking for. So all you can do, if it makes it look a little bit better, we can go back, because when it breaks, it should have a nice linear region. And it seems to have extended a lot. So what we'll do is we'll just see what this data value gives us. So we'll click this one. Hit OK. And that actually is a lot more significant. And that basically is what's happening is you got that nice linear region, and when we do our estimate to break, you'll notice it'll come down like this, and then it'll drop off significantly there. So we'll go with that data point, because that'll give us a nicer looking graph. Is it okay? So now we have our break and our UTS, right? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we can just format this point, go back to line color, no line, just get rid of that line so that way our table looks nice over here. And now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do an estimate to break between these two. So you go back, and now we have our break point, and we have the point that we last stopped at, right? That last point that we stopped at. So now what we're going to do is we'll copy all this data here, so we have it. We'll go back to the top and we'll make a new table over here. I'm going to paste this all, and I just want the values. So that was my last point. Now I need to find where that 13% first happened, because what we're going to be doing is on this graph we're going to connect this point, this last point here, to this break point here. So we'll now find that 13%. There's our value right there. Let's give this a color. We'll call this the last, just so I know what I'm looking for. So now what we need to do is we need to copy this data here, bring it back to the top, and we'll paste it. Okay, so now let's just do the values. I don't need these, so I'm just gonna select them and I'm gonna clear the contents. These were the elongations, I don't get those, so we'll just clear those contents. We don't need these, we can clear those contents. We don't need these, clear those contents. And now all we really want, we need this strain value, but we do not need this, right? Remember the strain value we got for this one was the value that we found below. Somehow I didn't copy that. Copy, go back to the top, and that was the strain value that we found, correct? I'll just paste that as a value. So now I have my starting strain and my ending strain for the estimate to break. I also have my starting stress and I have my ending stress. We actually decided we were going to use this data value right now. I'll use that one. That was the one that gave us a better table. So now we have those two. We don't need these. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start making our table. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to keep that same slope, that same grading kind of slope that's slowly decreasing down. And then what happens is as it gets closer to breaking point, that's where the bonds and stuff start to break, and that's where you'll notice it starts to pull apart. So that's why it gets this nice slope and then it just falls off at the end. So now we'll go back to our data and we'll start. Well, actually, let's format our data series first. So what we'll do is we'll select our data, so that way we can see as we go through what our data points are doing, okay? So we'll add a new, and we'll call this the estimate. Estimate to break. You guys can change these titles, it's whatever you want to do. All right, so our X values and our Y values, okay? Now we have our X and our Y. Now we'll go back to format, estimate to break, format selection, and now we want to add a line style. We want it to be dashed, because remember this is an estimate, so we don't know exactly if this is how it went, correct? So we're going to do that. Line color, solid line, we can add whatever we want. Typically you keep it the same color, okay? So then we go to markers. We don't want a marker, we don't no fill, marker options, none. So now what it's going to do is it's just going to make a nice dashed line to the end, okay? So now I'll close that. So now we have our series set up. So as I add points, what it's going to do is it's going to change as it goes down, okay? So let's select a data value. Let's try 83,000. Let's try 83,000, and we'll try a string value of 0.135. So now we can go to here, and we should be able to see what that looks like. Let's add a couple more. Oh, I went backwards. 84,000. There we go. 84,000. And that should work. And then we can do 2,000. And we'll go to 0.14. This same kind of trend going down. Going down. So all I did was when I highlighted these two, it keeps the same trend, and if I drag the little corner box, it keeps the same trend going down. So I just did that just to see what it's going to look like. Okay, so we're getting something close to what we're looking for. All right. So now all I need to do is I just need to modify these couple points that are right here, bring them up a little bit, and so that way it drops off more suddenly at the end. So now we can go back to our data series. And let's call this, let's go back and see where we were going wrong. So, okay, at that point. So we just have the 16 point, right? So what we notice is our graph was looking relatively good, but we stopped at 16 and we left out this whole region in here. So all we have to do is we just have to go back. And let's just try moving these. So I just highlighted the two, and then I'm just going to move them lower. And just for the fun of it, we'll just keep this same trend going down till we get to there. And then we'll do the same thing here, and we'll keep that same trend going. So it looks like we actually went too far with that same trend that we had, right? So let's just try, see if we can't clear these contents, move this back up, and see what that produces on our graph. Okay, it's looking slightly better, okay? That keeping that same slope looks fine, and you could probably get away with this. I would try adding 1 or 2 more points, but I don't want to fiddle with it too much. So you guys can go home, and when you guys do this, you can mess with it and try to make it more approximate. What you want to do is you want to still have that nice slope. Now what I could have done is I could have made a little more slope to it maybe, so it was more smooth, and then have that break point at the end. But this is basically the general concept of what you want. Another tip, what happens with these graphs is down on the bottom, it's going to put it in scientific. So what you're going to want to do is you just want to double click it. Where it goes to number, under that you're going to just select number, and then that's going to put your values instead of scientific, it's going to put them in just plain old numerical values with decimals, because that's what we want to see. So now we have that, and now we have our stress. Okay? So then the next step would be to add the second graph and add all your other graphs if you were doing the complete stress strain curve where you have everything on the same graph. Okay, so that'll conclude the first part, to add the labels, we'll go to, forgot to add the labels, so we'll just go to layout under chart tools, we'll go to axis labels, we'll add an axis below, and we'll add one to the side. Okay, so we have those two axes, so we had our title below, and we had our rotated title to the side, and then you can just double click and you can relabel them. Stress. We got this in PSI, remember stress is measured in PSI. And if you recall, strain is is unitless because it's inch over inch. Okay? Now we have our axis titles, we have our UTS. You can add a data label to this, so you right click, you add the data label, and you can move this around. You can call it break. You can add that X value here, where your strain was. And then you have your stress, okay? So now you have everything labeled, everything's there, just do that times 4, right, on the same graph. And then what you're gonna wanna do, in order to do the offset, you just right click off to the side, and you're gonna, or actually, we'll do this one on the bottom. So on the bottom, when you see the title of it, you're gonna right click that, and then you're gonna go to move or copy. When you click move or copy, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna select the chart that you're doing. Right now, we're doing the 2024 T3 All. It's right there. And what we wanna do is we wanna select the option to create a copy. And when we create a copy, you're gonna hit OK. Now that creates a copy, and what you notice is it kept it down here, and it just relabeled it number 2. Double click the title, 0.002 offset, okay? So this one we're gonna use for our offset. They're both the same graphs, but now we have a copy. And for when you do the whole thing, you're gonna have your all, and then you'll just create 3 copies, and then you'll do your graphs from there for the offsets. Okay, so that way you're really only doing 1 graph, and then you just add the offset trend lines. Okay?